Well, good evening, my dear friends. Sejam muito bem-vindos à Fundação Oriente, Sr. Embaixadora Manuela Franco, Cônsul-Geral de Portugal em Goa, seja também muito bem-vinda. We gather today to release the book, The Portuguese Colonial Empire, Buttressed from Within, by Dr. Sharmila Pais. It is therefore my great privilege to introduce the author and of this work. Dr. Sharmila Pais, Associate Professor of History at St. Xavier College, Mapusa, Goa. With over 2 decades of teaching experience and a postgraduate foundation from Goa University. Dr. Pais earned her doctorate in 2018 with research focused on elections in colonial Goa. Subsequently published as The Encounter with the Ballot in Colonial Goa, a work that itself broke new ground in the field. Her scholarly contributions do not end there. In 2023, she co-authored The Quest for Goa, offering a sweeping historical overview of this land. And in 2024, she edited Folk Tales from Goa, a testament to the breadth of her engagement with Goan culture and memory. Her research interests span colonial history to local governance and the socio-political transformations that have shaped this region across centuries. Through each of her works, Dr. Pais has demonstrated a singular purpose to explore the dimension of the past that have been too long in the shadows and to contribute to a richer, more nuanced understanding of Goa history. Well, my beautiful and handsome audience, in this room we are always surrounded by art and, in my perspective, by beauty, the beauty of Antonio Xavier Trindade. And it takes me to Coco Chanel's quote: "There is time for work, there is time for love. That leaves no other time." I appreciate this sentence, nonetheless, I partially agree. I believe that there is time to create something beyond work, putting all of our love on it, of course, but something to add value to the society without thinking of gaining anything from it. In my perspective, once again, that was exactly what Dr. Sharmila Pais did when writing this book. So congratulations on your new book and the work you have been doing. It is truly a pleasure to launch your book here. We have the privilege of having Dr. Maria de Lourdes Bravo da Costa and Dr. Parag Paron reflecting on the book, followed by a Q&A session with the author, and we will conclude with a speech by our today's chief guest, Dr. Carlos Alvarez Ferreira, Honorable Member of the Legislative Assembly. So I would like to request you, just to avoid to have a long session, all of you, you will have between 10 and 15 minutes, okay, do not exceed this, otherwise it's a weekday, so to avoid to have a long session. And agora umas palavras em português, sei que fala e percebe português, para felicitá-la, uma vez mais, pelo livro que acabou de escrever e dizer-lhe que, tal como agora, cá estaremos para apoiar em futuros projetos que eventualmente venha a concretizar. Se estiver dentro do nosso alcance, cá estaremos para apoiar naquilo que precisar. Tá? Muito obrigado, thank you. E agora sou a doutora Maria de Lourdes Bravo da Costa. Antes disso, talvez fazíamos o lançamento do livro e depois teria... Sim, temos agora e depois terá a palavra. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to present the book, The Portuguese Colonial Empire, Buttressed from Within. Language, Privilege, Land, Commerce and Evolving Colonial Strategies up to the 19th century by Dr. Sharmila Pais. As the title suggests, this work examines the way in which Portuguese colonial rule was sustained not only through military and administrative mechanisms, but also through the collaboration of various local actors. These included gauncas, interpreters, elite groups, envoys, feudal lords, and merchant intermediaries who function as key intermediaries between the colonial state and indigenous society. The book demonstrates that without the participation and cooperation of these groups, it would have been difficult for the Portuguese to maintain their authority over their territories for such an extended period. It highlights the complex networks of negotiation, accommodation, and mutual dependence that underpin colonial governance. Through meticulous research and insightful analysis, Dr. Sharmila offers a fresh perspective on the mechanism that strengthened and sustained the Portuguese colonial empire from within. The author argues that Portuguese authority would have been difficult to sustain without the participation and cooperation of these local groups. It highlights networks of negotiation, accommodation, and mutual dependence that shaped colonial governance. The author also emphasizes the importance of treaties with the feudal rulers, the bond-slaves of Soundbody and Sondekar Warrior of the Kingdom of Sunda, also known as Sonda or Sunde, which allowed the Portuguese to expand beyond the Vedis conquistas and incorporate the novice conquistas between 1740 and 1788, significantly enlarging the territory of Goa. As mentioned in the preface by the author, researchers have documented resistance to colonial policies among Goans from the 16th century onwards. This work, however, shifts the focus towards negotiation, accommodation, and engagement as key processes shaping colonial power relations. It argues that many local actors, driven by economic gain and upward mobility, supported colonial policies and thereby facilitated Portuguese administration in areas such as governance, economy, and political control. These groups function as intermediaries between Europe and the indigenous system. In the first chapter, Foundation of Estado da India, Buttressed by Strategic Alliances, Dr. Sharmila provides an overview of the early phase of Portuguese expansion and its evolution into complexities of the 19th century. The chapter highlights how Portugal built its maritime power in the Indian Ocean and established its position as a major European power. It also discusses Afonso Albuquerque's conquest of Goa and the role of local collaborators such as Krishna Sinai and Timoja, who advised him on strategies in the Mandovi River. Several upper caste Hindus and the Gauncas of Talegaon Comunidade are also shown to have supported the Portuguese in consolidating their foothold. Overall, the chapter emphasizes Albuquerque's cooperative relationship with sections of the local elite. The chapter further illustrates how Albuquerque cultivated a relationship of mutual dependence and cordiality with these groups, recognizing that cooperation with established local power structures was essential for the stability and longevity of Portuguese rule. An earlier study on the subject, Agência de Diplomacia Portuguesa na Índia, Hindus, Muçulmanos, Judeus e Parsis, by Dr. Panduranga Pisolengar, documented several important figures associated with the region's history. Other scholars have also highlighted these intermediaries and the early phase of the Portuguese encounter. One of the key strengths of the present volume is that it significantly expands the record by bringing a large number of individuals and their contributions into focus, offering a more nuanced understanding of Goa's past beyond the conventional narratives of the 16th and 17th centuries. This collaborative dimension is further developed in the second chapter, Language in Colonial Governance, Politics, and Culture, which highlights the crucial role of interpreters or linguists. Their linguistic skills enable communication with local rulers and merchants, facilitated negotiations, and supported diplomatic exchanges. Interpreters were also essential for treaty making, intelligence gathering, and administrative coordination. Overall, the chapter underscored how linguistic and cultural mediation was central in the early Portuguese presence in Goa. The political exigencies of the 17th century often required strategic efforts to bring neighboring and regional rulers into negotiation. In this context, the interpreters played multiple roles, serving not only as linguistic mediators, but also as envoys, financial intermediaries, and diplomats. Among the notable interpreter envoys of this period were Azunai, Krishna Sinai, and Ramoji Sinai Kotari. A selected list of interpreters who served in various capacities, sometimes representing the Portuguese administration, and at other times engaging with political powers, is provided. Figures are mentioned, including Bogana Kamutin Vaga Ananta Kamutin Vaga, Sadasiva Kamutin Vaga, Sakaram Narayan Vaga, and Sutaji Anand Rao, reflecting the wide network of intermediaries involved. Gift exchange was a significant diplomatic practice used by rulers across the world to foster political relations and facilitate negotiations. In Asia, ceremonial exchange of gifts formed an essential part of diplomatic culture, reflecting power relations, courtly traditions, and political ambition. In the context of Portuguese Goa, the practice of saguates or saguades, the ceremonial diplomatic gifts, played a crucial role in maintaining relations between the Estado de India and neighboring Indian and foreign rulers. Archival records from Goa frequently reference such exchanges, highlighting their importance in diplomacy despite the financial burden involved. For the Portuguese, gift giving served not only to strengthen alliances but also to project the prestige, generosity, and authority of the colonial state in line with established Asian diplomatic conventions. The author notes that the study of Saguat or Saguatis remains a relatively neglected aspect of Goan geography, despite its significance in colonial governance. Rooted in a diplomatic tradition of the Indian subcontinent, these exchanges facilitated negotiation, mediation, and sustained political engagement from the 16th century onwards. Records preserved in the Goa archives, particularly under Reis Vizinhos, Saguates dos Diversos Reis, and Conselho da Fazenda, show frequent reference to such practices. A chapter on rank, privilege, and alliances lists individuals who were granted titles between 1660 and 1888, along with a table of notable Goan families and their coats of arms. It also provides brief description of selected title holders and members of the local nobility, highlighting both Goans who received honors and Portuguese nobility residing in Goa. The chapter, Land, Loyalty, and Power, examines land ownership and control in Goa, particularly the transformation of communally held Gaunkari land under colonial rule. It shows how the Portuguese, like other earlier rulers, increasingly treated land as state property and used its distribution as a mechanism to consolidate authority, secure loyalty, and ensure service to the colonial administration. This study also discusses the Barkas and the Prazos, which are hereditary land lease, illustrating how land was granted and managed as part of colonial policy. Drawing on records such as Mercedes Gerais, Dizimos, and Prazos da Coroa, preserved in the Goa archives, the author notes that land distribution was used strategically as a tool of political control, a practice initiated as early as Afonso de Albuquerque. While the topic opens up important new direction for research, the author acknowledges that it requires further in-depth study beyond the scope of the present work. A detailed discussion on the Novas Conquistas and their acquisition through treaties signed with the rulers of Sonda and Sonbari is provided. These territories were ceded by local sovereigns who sought Portuguese protection against rival regional powers. Incorporated between 1740 and 1788, the Novas Conquistas are examined in two chapters. One, Novas Conquistas and negotiated settlements. And second is administration and new conquests, balancing tradition and authority, along with the Desayados and Sardasayados, that is colonial alliances and power relations. Together, these chapters illuminate the diplomatic processes behind Portuguese expansion and the complexities of governing newly acquired territories that had earlier been shaped by the Adil Shahi Sultanate, the Sunda rulers, the Bhonsles, as well as Maratha and Mughal influence. The discussions of Desayados further highlights the pre-colonial feudal structures of the Konkan region. Overall, these sections open up promising avenues for further research in this field. The final chapter, Merchant Capitalists in Goan Economy and Administration in the 19th Century, examines the rise of merchant capitalism in Goa during the 19th century. It highlights the role of Hindu, Muslims, and Jewish merchants as key actors in regional trade networks. These Goan merchants function as intermediaries between the colonial administration and the local economy, facilitating exchange and acting in mutually beneficial roles. The chapter also discusses selected merchants individually, illustrating their significance in colonial economic and administrative structures. Yeah. In conclusion, I believe that this book fulfills the author's objective of opening up new avenues for future research. The work is supported by numerous tables, a useful glossary, and an extensive bibliography. Moreover, the author's extensive use of archival manuscripts and other primary sources provides a strong documentary foundation for the study, making the book a valuable resource for researchers and students alike. Thank you.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to introduce the Portuguese Colonial Empire, Buttressed from Within, by Dr. Sharmila Pais. Most histories of Portuguese colonialism in Goa are filtered through either Lusocentric or nationalist frameworks. The former tends to celebrate Portuguese influence, while the latter condemns it. Both approaches are limited by binary thinking and fail to capture the complexities and tensions within the empire and local society. Dr. Sharmila's book stands out because it moves beyond these binary frameworks and focuses on the role of the local actors in shaping the Portuguese empire. This book challenges and disrupts the entrenched determinism of the Portuguese empire in the dominant historiography and reveals how the empire was forged through partnership, adaptation, and conflict with the local rulers, local elites, and social structures. In other words, Dr. Sharmila demonstrates that the Portuguese Empire in India was not just a result of military power, but a collaborative political system that relied on indigenous actors who also co-authored the system of rule. Through this study, Dr. Sharmila invites us to reconsider how we understand the history of Portuguese Empire in India. Structured across 10 chapters, the book views together the central theme of mutually empowering interactions between the empire and local elites. This concept suggests a dynamic exchange in which both sides, imperial and indigenous, gain from their entanglements. Dr. Sharmila's model not only highlights the state's dependence on the local power and resource distribution, but also brings to light the socially embedded nature of these interactions. Delving into the intricate ties between the empire and society, Dr. Sharmila uncovers the overlooked local actors who powered the Portuguese Empire's rise, expansion, and endurance. The book identifies several categories of local actors and cautions against viewing them as monolithic groups. The first group, political collaborators, played a crucial role in Portuguese conquest of Goa. Through vivid examples, Dr. Sharmila explores the nuanced strategies used to engage Indian rulers, from the Adilshai to the Mughals, Marathas, Nayakas of Keladi, Bhosles of Savandwari, Sondekar, Hyder Ali, and even the emperors of China and Japan. The book brings to life the subtle strategy of gift giving and diplomatic sensitivity that define these relationships. Central to the story are the Shenvis, a powerful political elite whose linguistic mastery and diplomatic acumen allowed them to shape Portuguese interaction across centuries. Moreover, their association with Portuguese through culture of diplomacy took them to every part of the subcontinent. The second group of collaborators comprises the Shenvis, the scribal elite, who formed the backbone of Portuguese Empire. The Portuguese Empire functioned as a vast paper regime, with its strength and competence demonstrated by the extensive use of written documents in nearly all state activities. Following the territorial expansion with the acquisition of the new conquest at the end of the 18th century, there was a significant increase in the use of paper, pen, and ink in these territories. Despite this, literacy did not expand considerably, and writing remained a restricted technology primarily utilized by the scribal elite as a tool of power rather than as a means of mass communication. The Portuguese administration depended on local literate classes, particularly the Shenvis, who formed the foundation of the colonial bureaucracy in the new conquest and later evolved into landed elites and the middle class. The scribal elite, with their knowledge of local customs and traditions, filtered information reaching the colonial state. Portuguese administrators relied on the Shenvis to translate texts and define local customs, which led to the codification of fluid local traditions into rigid colonial laws. By incorporating Marathi records written in Modi script, Dr. Sharmila demonstrates that the administration of the colonial state in the new conquest was largely dominated by the Hindu elite. The scribal elite were responsible for translating official documents for the Sardesais and Desais of new conquest, including terms of vassalage, land grants, peace agreements, and matters of state intervention in family disputes from Portuguese to Marathi. Dr. Sharmila argues that the written documents were not autonomous bearers of meaning, but were interpreted by the scribal elite within the context of local power relations. Thus, documents such as imperial orders, property deeds, and court judgments became contested spaces dominated by the scribal elite. A document issued or ratified by the Portuguese state might reflect state intention, but it remained open to multiple readings and interpretations. The third group of collaborators consists of Sardesais and the Desais in new conquest. Dr. Sharmila examines how the Sardesais and Desais, hereditary fiefholders who contributed soldiers to their overlords, shifted their allegiance among various regional rulers before aligning their interests with the Portuguese Empire. In the old conquest, the Portuguese abolished the feudal tenures of Desaiado system, transferring governance to the Gaunkharias. However, in the new conquest, the Portuguese retained this system to consolidate their authority. Dr. Sharmila identifies two reasons for accommodating the fiefholders: the loss of the northern province to the Marathas, which diminished Portuguese prestige, and the 18th century shortage of military power, which led Portuguese to rely on diplomacy. As a result, consolidating Portuguese rule in the new conquest required collaboration with the local fiefholders, who pledged loyalty and provided military services during conflicts. In return, the Portuguese state protected their feudal lands, privileges, commercial interests, and socio-religious rights. During the early colonial regime in the new conquest, these fiefholders served as proxy administrators to establish law and order. Despite occasional revolts and disruptions, this policy of accommodative alliances enabled the Portuguese to control the peripheral regions of Goa with relative ease. Some fief holders also provided financial assistance to the state. Dr. Sharmila's archival analysis yields two key observations. First, the fief holders supported the Portuguese against the Marathas. Second, when centralization threatened their rights and privileges, they resorted to armed resistance. Although these rebellions are often viewed as freedom movements, it is notable that the fief holders later rallied behind the Portuguese state and became increasingly involved in government commissions and electoral boards. The fourth group of collaborators consists of merchant capitalists, whom we are now addressing as portfolio capitalists, who prospered through various means, including holding important offices, acquiring privileged land tenures, engaging in commerce, revenue farming, and banking. Dr. Sharmila analyzes the roles of influential families such as Mamai Kamath, Dempo, Kekro, Kundaikar, Mukunda Joshi, Purab Desai, and Shet Kholop. Some of these families financed the administration by guaranteeing loans and in return received significant material benefits, including decorations and titles of European nobility. Dr. Sharmila demonstrates that the relationship with Portuguese imperial agents and colonizers, including high officials, Luso-descendants, and Goan Catholic elite were complex, ranging from amicable to conflictual. The fifth group of collaborators comprises the influential Catholic elite, who were awarded heraldic titles in recognition of their meritorious service to the Portuguese state. Dr. Sharmila shows that since 17th century, several courtly ranks and honors were conferred upon indigenous Catholic elite, whose social and financial status was further enhanced through land acquisitions. While many Catholic elites received privileges and titles of peerage or fidalgos, Dr. Sharmila focuses on prominent families such as the Miranda family of Lotulim, the Braganza family of Chandor, and Antonio Francisco Xavier, the Braganza Pereira of Otorda. The public display of these titles signified social status, loyalty, and prominence within society. Additionally, Dr. Sharmila highlights the contribution of Goan doctors who served the Portuguese Empire in Africa under challenging conditions and were honored with distinctions for their service. While the book's central argument is that the local actors directly shaped the colonial enterprise in Goa, Dr. Sharmila devotes significant attention to the new conquest. A major gap in Goan historiography is a predominant focus on the old conquest, with the new conquest often depicted as wild and backward. Although Portuguese Goa nearly tripled in size with the annexation of the new conquest, there is a tendency to project the characteristics of 16th century Portuguese state onto these regions. This book departs from earlier studies by emphasizing the state's functioning in new conquest. In the 18th century, the Portuguese generally refrained from disrupting the long-standing cultural practices of the new conquest. While Catholic inhabitants were governed by the laws of the old conquest, exceptions were made for Hindus in these areas. The book discusses on the diversity of pre-colonial institutions and tradition across the new conquest and of the colonial state efforts to organize its administration within the pre-existing indigenous network, and this is new to historians. Additionally, Dr. Sharmila examines the role of Marquês de Pombal and subsequent Portuguese administrative efforts in developing the new conquest. The book offers two significant heuristic formulations. First, it demonstrates that the colonial state was malleable and could be manipulated to serve the interest of the dominant elites, including scribes, gaonkars, sardesais, desais, and merchant capitalists. Second, it avoids portraying the entire colonial population as passive victims, instead emphasizing the agency of the local elites, both Hindu and the Catholic, upon whom Portuguese dominance heavily depended. The work underscores the reciprocal nature of Portuguese colonial empire, where its consolidation and longevity relied as much on the consent and cooperation of local elite as on the directives coming from Lisbon. This analysis represents a provocative combination to the field. At the core of the book is a thorough engagement with Portuguese and Marathi sources written in Modi script. Through its subtlety, sophistication, and command of sources, the book substantially advances understanding of the survival and expansion of Portuguese empire and elucidates the vital socio-economic processes underlying post-colonial Goa. This book is poised to spark scholarly conversations, stimulate critical reflections, and challenge prevailing perspectives. I wish you a thought-provoking journey through these pages. Thank you.
Muito obrigada, Dr. Paulo, pelas suas reflexões. E depois, Doutora Lourdes e Parag Korobo. Boa tarde a todos presentes a esta cerimônia do lançamento do meu livro. A very good evening to all of you present here. Honorable Member of the Legislative Assembly and the Chief Guest, Dr. Carlos Ferreira Álvares, Consul-Geral de Portugal, present here. Dr. Paulo Gomes, Diretor da Fundação Oriente, distinguished keynote speakers, honored guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a privilege for me to announce the launch of my cherishing work, The Portuguese Colonial Empire, Buttressed from Within. What do I talk more since the esteemed keynote speakers have spoken all about it? I have nothing much to say of the book because it's all there in the public domain, so to say. I can share the experiences of my journey, personal journey, the challenges, perhaps the title, the reason for the title that I've chosen, a few things, so to say, behind the scenes, which are not known neither to my family nor the keynote speaker. So there I have an upper hand beyond what they have said. Well, it took me nearly 4 years to complete this book. Somewhere around 2022, I started the journey of this book, but in between there was a pause because I took up 2 projects. One was being the editor of the Goan Folk Stories, and there was another co-authored work with Shri Prajal Sakadande. So that was like a textbook that we have. And after finishing my commitments, I decided to ponder over a subject which was quite dear to my heart. I've been thinking of certain, the first thing that I thought of was about certain, privileges that the Goans had cherished or they were enjoying for so many centuries. And then it made me wonder, perhaps it was something that was, some kind of a collaboration that sustained the Portuguese colonial empire for so many years. Most of us, as students of Goan history, we are aware that the Portuguese captured Goa in 1510. The capture was piecemeal. First it was the Welsh conquistadors, later it was new conquistadors. And in 1961, they left a state. So what was it that sustained the empire for so long? Was it really a very smooth journey? Was it always collaboration? Definitely not. Because we know in the history of Goa that, there were conflicts, there were rebellions, there were revolts against the Portuguese for taxation, for different aspects, for some kind of unequal racial prejudice, probably sometimes. But yet it survives. And what was it? So it was a relation of give and take that I have explored to these 10 chapters, which have, running into almost about 385 pages. And it was very challenging because, it was a whole lot of refinement, and they never get over. You start, and I thought at some point in time I would launch the book in December, but it doesn't happen like that because you feel that you want to change and correct and that something is not wrong. As far as the title is concerned, the buttress, how did the idea of the title come to me? The end product that I see today, it is totally different from what I had envisaged maybe about 4 years back. I thought of various titles like, mediation and collaboration. And finally, it struck to me this word buttress, which is actually a term of architecture. Here I have used it as a in a very metaphorical sense. In the field of architecture, you have the buttress. And as a student of history, I remember having studied the flying buttress. We studied these during the Renaissance, the pre-Renaissance period, even in the 19th century. A buttress is a support system. Initially, they were very plain and very utilitarian. Over course of time, they became they had more aesthetic sense. And at Old Goa, the Basilica of Born Jesus has a buttress. If you have probably not really noticed it before, maybe during your next journey to Old Goa, you could notice it's actually along the road, the main road. You can see the buttress, the structure of the buttress projecting out. You know, as you go to Ponda, it's on the right hand side. And when you come to Panjim, it'll be to your left. So a buttress is nothing but a support system. And this is how the empire survived with the help of, it was like a give and take relationship that the colonizers had with the largely the elite, different categories of elite, because you can't survive. Even today, I'm sure we can't survive. I'm so glad that, you have all been here to support my, the launch of my book. So it is a collaboration. Your presence, your support itself makes my day today. So for all, it's not only the Portuguese, but even the British colonial power, or you name any power, the indigenous support was essential. And in all of this, who was likely to benefit? It was beneficial for both. The colonial power benefited, obviously, the elites also benefited. Sometimes it was a channel by which they could escalate their status. It gave them certain position in the society. So it was a give and take relationship which I have captured here, and I have tried to explore a lot of archival sources. And I can see some of my students also have come here. Thank you for coming. A word of like an advice from a person who has been in touch with you. The archives has got tremendous potential for new data. Very often we think that what has been published in Goan history, that's it. I would say it's just the tip of the iceberg. And then we tend to make our conclusions that this is the final fact of history. Even as I present this book, I would like to say that this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many documents and manuscripts which have not been explored. Believe me, in the 17th century, some of the 18th century documents which I have used for my work, they are crystal clear. Their handwriting is so very clear, because at some point in time, I had this fear if I would be able to really comprehend the language. 19th century documents have a problem. They are withering and the pages are, but 18th century documentation some of it is really very, very good, which helps us to bring, if somebody is to explore, it brings about new kind of insights that is much more. And although now this is in the form of 10 chapters, the fourth one is a concluding chapter of mine where I have given insights of how people can work. I myself have intentions of working in the future if time permits and if I have the willpower as such. But something that is not spoken and which I wish to share in just 1 or 2 minutes is the support of the military. The military supported the local indigenous soldiers were a part of that whole collaborative system, because coming from a distance from Portugal to Goa, it would take about 4 months. In bad weather conditions, maybe about 5 months. I remember my father telling me when he traveled from Goa to Portugal, it took him almost about 5 months. That was in the 20th century, when he probably traveled by the ships. So it was a long distance, and you could not expect people, manpower, to come to Goa. And that is how the local system supported served as a buttress, not only to Goa, but you see it even in British India. You have the indigenous elite who were the supporters. You see it in other colonies of Brazil and Africa. You have the indigenous elite who served the empire because it mattered to them, both stood to gain. And I hope as I now present my book, I'm open to feedback, because we are always learners as students of history. If there is something which is contrary to what I see, I'm open to feedback. I can always make a correction in the future. So do give your feedback. And before I wind up, I wish to thank foremost the diretor da Fundação Oriente, Dr. Paulo Gomes, because when I wrote a mail to him, instantly the next day I had a response, and he said, "We will host your launch." And I was so pleased because I didn't expect an answer from him immediately. So, muito obrigada, Dr. Paulo. And I have so many people to thank for my keynote speakers who have come here and shared their views. Dr. Frederick Norona, he is always very supportive. Right from day one, he's with me and he gives me a lot of freedom. All of you colleagues who are present here, Abigail has been in touch with me, and my printers, Rama and Kedar, Tara, who has been very, very supportive. Now, not the least, my family, they are the backbone. And I am less of a kind of a housewife, sorry to say that. I'm not so much into the domestic domain as such, but they give me a lot of freedom and encouragement. So it is thanks to them. They say, okay, fine, you carry on. We know that you don't cook so well, but you can devote your time to this. So I thank my husband, who is very, very supportive all through this, because they don't expect, I don't know, when you have no expectations from a lady like that, they have given up on you. So it's, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. So thank you so much. A word of appreciation to our chief guest who consented to being here. And thank you, Dr. Alvarez, Ferreira Alvarez. Muito obrigada a todos.
Now we have time for some questions. Yes, no? No questions, no doubts? No? Okay, maybe during the tea and coffee.
We probably haven't gone through the work, so...
No, this is, yeah, maybe outside. Okay, so Dr. tenha vontade.
We are privileged indeed to have amidst us Dr. Carlos Alvarez Ferreira, Honorable Member of the Goa Legislative Assembly, who needs no introduction, so I'm going to keep it very short.
Don't have to say that.
He was the Advocate General of Goa and served as the Assistant Solicitor General of India. A passionate Goan at heart, he has consistently placed the interest of the state above all else. Known for his commitment to public cause, he has never hesitated to speak his mind, a true advocate of justice, and raise his voice on issues that matter. I'm very happy to request Dr. to kindly address and share your thoughts on this occasion.
The Honorable Portuguese Consul General, Dr. Manuel Franco, the Vice Consul, Dr. Domingos, the Director da Fundação do Oriente, Dr. Paulo Gomes, the author of today, Dr. Sharmila Pais, Dr. Lourdes Bravo da Costa, Dr. Parag Barob. I want to mention one particular person is Professor Sanjeev Sardesai, who is also here. He is also a historian. And there are so many people who are here, like Coelho and Dr. Fernand Pulas, and I will not take all the names, but I think I can call out everyone's name. Frederick Norona, who is the publisher of Goa 1566, who has been supporting a lot of publications of our Goan writers. And of course, Advocate Geoffrey Martins, the husband of Dr. Sharmila, and the children who are here. When Geoffrey called me up and told me he would like me to be here as the chief guest, I asked him in what connection. And the moment he told me what it was, you know, there is one Portuguese father, you know, which is uma casa portuguesa, you know that one. Cheira bem, cheira Lisboa, you know, those words are there. So I thought, cheira Goa, eu estou cá. So anything Goan, I will be here. So since this book was going to reflect about Goa and the past, I thought I will definitely be here because I love history and I love to know about the past of Goa. I must congratulate Dr. Sharmila, because to write a book on history, and today, history from times immemorial has been very controversial in writing history books. Sometimes you can take one view, you can take another view, you can suppress something, but she has brought out things. She has not left anything behind. She has been polite to say what she wants to say, but she has been frank about things which have happened. But I want to say one thing, forgive me, though you have used the word colonial empire, I want to use the word colonial regime. Why I say colonial regime? Because let me be honest, I've read the book, I asked for a copy in advance, so I know what I was going to speak about. I'm not going to give you a lot of details about the book, but it gives you how the Portuguese came in, and to a period when the Portuguese virtually amalgamated with the locals here. First they were virtually like rulers, then afterwards they brought in the local population to bring them in part of the administration, into education, in so many things. So therefore, I didn't see them in the later part that they were like empire which was ruling, but I thought them it was a regime which was there. So this is why I thought that this book, I would think of it in these two parts, where it was like strict, where you have a conqueror coming and then imposing a rule, but afterwards blending with the community. And why I say this is, unlike certain regimes which conquered and colonized certain other countries and nations, the Portuguese left an indelible mark on Goa. And that I would say, which you would see, not because I got any benefit from the Portuguese. I was born in 1966 after liberation, so I have not enjoyed any Portuguese benefits. But you would realize when the last Governor General, Vasali Silva, left the shores of Goa and he returned back, you would remember, if those who are here who knew, would know the type of welcome which was given to him. This would show the love and affection that people had for him. Also, I remember many years back, Amalia Rodrigues came here and she performed at the Kala Academy. I went as a child, my grandmother, my mother, everyone, we went for the performance. And I tell you one thing, I only heard Amalia on the radio or maybe on the LP records, but the people there in the audience were weeping as she performed. It was a type of a bond which they had lost and they were reviving. And I honestly, I was a young college boy at that time. I also cried for what I don't know. But it was those haunting memories which we had, and that is why I use the word colonial regime and not colonial empire. You understanding why I'm trying to say that? I don't know if you have seen recently, I made a post on the Facebook. I have a cousin of mine, Carmen Miranda from Panjim. She's in London now, and her sister is Lina Miranda. She's crossed 100 now, and she's in Portugal. Carmen had shared a video of a song of a fado called Meu Amor Distante. And it was a fado which was actually composed by Colin de Cruz from Divar. He's a jazz maestro. It was so beautiful. The fadista was so good. And on that page of hers, there was a debate raging. Some said it was AI, and some gave names of fadistas. And everything she sang spoke about Goa, the shores of Goa that she left, the palm trees swaying, the warm breeze of the Mandovi, the janelas of Fontainhas, all this, it gave you that kind of a feeling of going back. Of course, I called up Colin and I asked him, who was that fadista? And he said, this is what is called AI cloning. And it was so beautiful that I shared it on the Facebook. And because I wanted people to actually enjoy it, feel it, and have that kind of a memory or that kind of a thing when you go back in time. And this is not AI. This book is not AI. If you open AI, you may get distorted versions, including people what they write. And I don't know if you have seen that I have recently made a statement. History is not about what my uncle wrote few days back or few years back. It is proper research with proper bibliography and reference to proper records. And that is what I think Dr. Sharmila has done. And that gives us, and especially me, see, I'm going to be 60 this year, this month, of course, but so I have not had that kind of experience which many of you who are here have had of the Portuguese regime, the Portuguese era, but definitely the names which she has spoken about, the families she has spoken about, whether they are the Dempos, whether the Sardesais, whether they, of course, my family also was mentioned there. I don't know if you know about it. We have spoken about the Brazão of our family also. And so all these people, the Visconde de Perne, the Conde de Maé, all these people are those people whom either we have interacted with or we have known about them when we were small or as we grew up. And therefore, this book becomes, I would say, not just a book which is a piece of history or a recollection of history, but a book which recollects and recounts many things about Goa, which I think should be a book not just in a library of a school or college, but in every house of every individual. Because it is researched to that level where it is simple. And also there is one more thing I want to tell you, that as I read the book, I realized how she made references to what was happening here with exactly what was happening in Lisbon, which was affecting Goa. You understanding what I'm saying? Because if the regime there was doing something and it had to be followed in Goa, and how it was being accepted or not being accepted, everything was being put out by her. So I compliment her for this painful task, because it's not easy. Sometimes you can write out some things and you can just write some sequence of events, but comparing it even with Africa and then with here, and I think that is something wonderful what she has done. Speaking of the families here, that's why I spoke about Professor Sanjeev Sardesai, because your family is also mentioned over here in the book. And the Shenvis, of course, the Sinais, we say. So all these people have contributed and we have known all of them. And I congratulate you. Dr. Paul, you know, is always enthusiastic to support these initiatives. And from the time that he has come, I've seen that he has been working like a machine. In fact, I thought he would not be here today, because I just saw photographs a few days back that he was in Macau. He was with my cousin there, Carlos Cid Alvarez, who is the CEO of the Banco Nacional Ultramarine, and with his wife, Catarina Cotinelli. So they were there together, and so I was just thinking, will he make it or will he be there for 13th of June? But he was here. But as far as this book is concerned, I say one thing. I understood. In fact, I was just thinking one thing. How will there be a question an hour without we having read the book? But I think, Dr. Sharmila, what you have done, there may be some criticism. Of course, we welcome criticism. And sometimes we don't have to necessarily correct. We may justify what we have written. And I have no fear of speaking my mind when it comes to speaking with facts and speaking based on what we have substance to speak on. And that's what you have done. So I would like you to congratulate her for that, and a big hand to her. Thank you very much.
Well, perfect. 7 p.m., 1 hour, it's done. So, Dr. Sharmila, thank you very much once again. Dr. Parag, Dr. Maria Berlucci Prof. da Costa, Dr. Carlos, to all of you, thank you for coming. Now I think, Frederick, you are offering one book to each one of the... Is that? Take your opportunity, and now we have time to talk a bit more outside, to drink a coffee and tea and wine. I don't know if you have wine, Abigail, I don't know. Thank you once again, and we will be together soon. Thank you.